There's a strange kind of disorientation that doesn't come with panic or crisis. It's quieter than that. You wake up, go through your day, respond to messages, do what's expected, and nothing is technically wrong. Life looks fine from the outside, stable even. But somewhere underneath all of that, there's a subtle sense of being misplaced. Like you arrived somewhere you were supposed to be, and yet you don't recognize yourself in it. It's not sadness exactly, not anxiety either. It's more like standing in a familiar room that suddenly feels unfamiliar, as if the furniture hasn't moved, but the meaning has. And when you try to explain it to someone, the words don't come out right. Because how do you describe feeling lost when you did everything right? You followed the path, you made sensible choices, you built something that looks like a life, and still, there's this quiet question humming in the background, one you keep trying to ignore. Why do I feel like this? People in this state often blame themselves. They assume they're ungrateful, that maybe they're just dramatic or bored or too sensitive. After all, nothing is falling apart. There's food, work, routine, people who care. So why does everything feel so flat? What's happening here isn't a lack of success. It's a lack of resonance. Your life is functioning, but it isn't speaking to you anymore. At first, it shows up subtly. Moments that should feel satisfying don't land the way they used to. Achievements register intellectually, but not emotionally. You tell yourself, this is good, I should be happy. But the feeling doesn't arrive. This disconnect is often the earliest sign of something deeper, a kind of internal drift that psychology doesn't name right away. Because before there's a diagnosis, there's an experience, and the experience is this. You feel like you're living someone else's version of your life. You might notice your reactions slowing down. Things that once sparked excitement now feel neutral. Not painful, just dull. As if the emotional volume has been turned down without your consent. From the outside, you're still performing well, still showing up, still being responsible, but inside, you're operating on autopilot. This is what many people don't realize. Feeling lost doesn't always come from chaos. Sometimes it comes from too much order, too much structure that no longer fits who you've become. Over time, the nervous system adapts to this misalignment. When you live in a way that looks right but feels wrong, your body learns to conserve energy. It stops investing emotionally. Not because it's broken, but because it's protecting you. Under prolonged internal conflict, the brain shifts into a low reward mode. Dopamine responses flatten. Motivation becomes mechanical rather than inspired. You do things because you're supposed to, not because you feel pulled toward them. This isn't depression in the classic sense. There's no dramatic collapse, no obvious despair. It's more like emotional neutralization. Psychology sometimes refers to this as anhedonia, but even that word doesn't capture the full picture. Because what's missing here isn't pleasure alone, it's meaning. When meaning erodes, everything becomes heavier. Not unbearable, just exhausting. You start to feel tired in a way rest doesn't fix, because the fatigue isn't physical, it's existential. This is where people begin to feel lost, not geographically, not socially, but internally. They wake up and move through their routines, but there's no inner anchor, no sense of, this is why I'm here. Days blur together, weeks pass quickly, but each day feels strangely long. And the most confusing part is that there's nothing to point to. No clear mistake, no dramatic wrong turn. Just a slow realization that the life you're living doesn't feel like it belongs to you anymore. This state often emerges in people who are highly functional, people who adapted early, who learned how to meet expectations, manage responsibilities, and keep things running smoothly. They're often praised for being stable, reliable, low maintenance. But what goes unseen is how much of themselves they've learned to suppress in order to stay that way. Over time, this suppression accumulates. Every small compromise, every moment you ignored your own discomfort because it wasn't serious enough. Every time you told yourself, "This is fine, I'll get used to it." Eventually, the psyche starts to resist, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to create friction. This friction shows up as restlessness without direction, a sense that something is off, but you can't locate it. You might start questioning choices you once felt certain about. Your work, your lifestyle, even your identity. This isn't because you failed, it's because you've changed. Human beings aren't static, but many lives are built as if we are. We make decisions at one stage of development and then live inside them long after they stop reflecting who we've become. When that happens, the mind experiences cognitive dissonance, a quiet but persistent tension between who you are and how you're living. Maintaining that tension requires energy, a lot of it. Eventually, the nervous system pushes back. It starts sending signals: fatigue, numbness, a sense of being lost, not as punishment, as information. What you're feeling isn't emptiness because nothing matters. It's emptiness because something important has been missing for a long time. This is why reassurance doesn't help. When someone tells you, "But you're doing great," it doesn't touch the problem. Because the problem isn't performance, it's alignment. You can have stability without satisfaction, comfort without connection, success without self-recognition. And when those gaps widen, the mind enters survival mode. You keep going, but only because stopping feels riskier than continuing. You function, but you don't feel alive. This is where many people mistake their experience for ingratitude. They tell themselves they should be happier, that other people have it worse, so they minimize their own inner signals. But minimizing doesn't make them disappear, it just pushes them deeper. Over time, this leads to nervous system overload. When you live in a state of quiet internal conflict, your body never fully relaxes. You're always bracing, even if you don't know what for. Social interactions begin to feel draining, not because you dislike people, but because being on requires energy you no longer have. You may withdraw slightly, not dramatically, just enough to create space. From the outside, it looks like introversion or fatigue. From the inside, it feels like preservation. This is an important distinction. People who feel lost even when life is fine aren't disengaging because they don't care. They're disengaging because caring has become too costly without meaning to support it. At some point, a deeper question surfaces, usually quietly, often late at night. What am I doing all this for? This question can be unsettling. It feels dangerous to ask, especially when your life is stable, but the question itself isn't a threat, it's a sign. When the mind asks, "What's the point?" it's not giving up. It's searching for coherence, for a reason that goes beyond habit and obligation. This is where existential fatigue enters, not despair, not hopelessness, just weariness from living without inner permission. You may notice that your old motivations no longer work. Fear doesn't push you the way it used to. Approval doesn't satisfy you. Achievement feels hollow. This can be frightening, because those motivators once kept you moving. But their failure isn't a loss, it's a transition. The psyche is recalibrating, letting go of external drivers in search of something more sustainable. This process often feels like being lost, because the old map no longer applies, but being without a map doesn't mean you're nowhere. It means you're between versions, between who you were taught to be and who you actually are, between survival and choice. This is the part most people rush through. They distract themselves, they add more goals, more stimulation, more noise, but the lost feeling persists because it isn't asking for distraction. It's asking for honesty. Honesty about what no longer fits. Honesty about what you've outgrown. Honesty about the parts of you that were sidelined to make life work. This is why the feeling can be strangely calm alongside the discomfort. There's no emergency, just a quiet insistence that something needs attention. Psychologically, this is often the beginning of reintegration. A slow return to self, not the dramatic reinvent your life version, the subtle one, the one where you start noticing what drains you instead of pushing through it, where you allow yourself to feel bored, dissatisfied, or uncertain without immediately fixing it. This isn't indulgence, it's recalibration. Energy doesn't come from forcing motion, it comes from meaning, and meaning emerges when your life reflects your values, not just your responsibilities. That's why you can feel energized, doing something small that feels true, and depleted, doing something important that feels hollow. The body follows the psyche. When the psyche is misaligned, the body resists. So feeling lost is not evidence of failure. It's evidence of sensitivity, of depth, of a mind that refuses to stay numb forever. This is the quiet awakening stage, not inspiring, not cinematic, just honest. You begin to see that the discomfort isn't random. It has a shape, a direction. It's pointing away from autopilot, toward presence, toward a life that feels inhabited rather than managed. This doesn't mean everything changes overnight. In fact, very little may change on the surface, but internally, something shifts. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What am I ignoring?" That question is gentle but powerful because it doesn't assume brokenness, it assumes wisdom. Slowly, meaning begins to return, not as a grand purpose, but as moments of resonance, a conversation that feels real, an interest you forgot you had, a sense of relief when you stop forcing yourself to care about things that no longer matter to you. This is how people find their way back, not by fixing their life, but by listening to it. If you feel lost, even when life is fine, it doesn't mean you're ungrateful. It means you're paying attention. Your inner world is asking to be included again. Not optimized, not justified, just heard. And that listening, that quiet reorientation, is often the beginning of something far more sustainable than the life you were living before. Not a louder life, not a more impressive one, a truer one. And once that begins, the lost feeling softens, not because everything is clear, but because you're no longer walking away from yourself. That's not being lost, that's finding your way back.